Afternoon, guys, and welcome to Doing Life with Sam and Kiri. It's great to have you join us on your Thursday afternoon for our weekly check-in. And yeah, it's good to be on here, and there's a lot of things that we can be discussing right now. And as you can see, the title of today's discussion is around, change starting in the heart, in the home, and then obviously it's able to impact the world around us. So we're going to delve into a few things, and I think, obviously there's a lot happening at the moment, and we're gonna get into that, aren't we, honey?
We are.
We are.
I think, though, it's interesting point to make, though, is all of a sudden my son actually posted up something. Is COVID even a thing still? Something like that. And good question. All of a sudden we've shifted from COVID-19 to now we've moved into this other topic that's quite controversial. And although we don't want to labour on the topic, but we do want to start to discuss how we view the world, how we view others, and what kind of, I suppose, shapes us. And then end of the, show, we want to talk about what's the answer, because we don't want to just talk about topics and have no answer. And by the way, this is our opinion, this is our journey, and this is what we've come to realise.
Yeah.
But so as my wife said, the heart, the home, and then the world. Obviously, the first place we've got to look in terms of change is ourselves.
Yeah.
And as Michael Jackson says, start with the man in the mirror. That's a good place to start. And then start to point the finger and look at other people. And so, look, I've got a few biblical, sort of a biblical approach I wanted to take on a few topics, maybe later. But it's all good. We reference like Martin Luther King and Winston Churchill, or Malcolm X does this, or this man said that. I go straight to the core of it as the man, but God, Jesus Christ, has given us the answer, has given us the power to move forward. And one thing that I've learned and I've come to realise is it's quick to look at someone or something and straight out the bat judge it.
Yeah.
And there's a scripture or reading. For time's sake, I'll really condense it. Is basically this lady done a very bad thing, a sin, and she's dragged in by the authorities to Christ, and he's sitting there, he's chilling, and the Pharisees at the time were like, she done this in the Word, in the Bible, in the law, and all these things that says she should be stoned for such a thing. And his instant reply to such a judgment was, he without sin cast the first stone. And that's powerful. See, a lot of the time we're quick to take up arms and eye for an eye, sin for sin, 1 + 1 equals this. But we don't realise that that's a continued cycle of, how can I put it, violence, attacks. And so, I don't know, I think we're going to just start to delve in and discuss, and I'll talk about a few things, but I think I'll hand it to my wife. And we'll have a little look at it.
Yeah. Obviously, we're talking a little bit broad, but obviously currently in the world, and what we're seeing a lot happening is the outrage that's happening specifically in the USA in regards to Black Lives Matter and to the situation with George Floyd, obviously, that has outraged the community, the country, the world. I think the difference is that this is not like the first time it's ever happened, right? We all know that this is something that thousands of lives have been impacted by this, racial issue, racism, where people are treated unfairly, people are judged because of the colour of their skin, people have to be afraid of, being in the custody of police because of their experience of what's happening. And there are thousands upon thousands of cases, just not all of them were recorded and posted up on social media. So it's really an underlying issue that's always been there. And I think one thing I think about is like, I've got some points here, is that the truth is people are judged based on their outward appearance. People are judged by the colour of their skin. They're judged by their gender. They're judged by their economic status. They're judged by the car that they jump out of. They're judged by their material possessions. We make prejudgments based on what we see. And even in 1 Samuel, it talks about man looks at the outward appearance. That is reality. And one thing that I feel I want to bring up in our discussion today is it's very easy for us to point the finger and be like, they need to change this and this needs to happen. And I'm making a stand against that when, like the title of this discussion is it starts firstly in our heart. Where are we at, first of all? And I think that's a very confrontational question to ask ourselves. And like Samuel said, look in the mirror. And what we're seeing happening in America has been happening all around the world, and particularly with Indigenous people of all countries.
Right.
So we're Māori, Indigenous of New Zealand. We live in Australia. We have Indigenous Australian here. And the reality is this is not just an isolated case of the black people in America. This is happening all around the world. It's just been highlighted. There's been a big spotlight put on this now, and everyone's saying, we need to deal with this issue. The reality is we've needed to deal with this issue for a long time.
Yep.
And the first thing we need to say is in our own heart, in our own mind. And I think the big thing is we need to take responsibility. Yes, we can call for change. Yes, we can stand and demand justice, and we can demand that somebody's held accountable. But the reality is we are all accountable, because the society that's been created, we've all contributed to in some way or form. And I think about racism as to say, and if you were to say, well, are you a racist, Kiri? I'm like, no, I'm not. Have I said things that could be perceived as racist? Have I said things that are undermining other racial groups? Yes, I have. That's just truth. We'd be liars to be like, nah, man, I'm perfect as. I've never said any cheeky slurs towards another culture.
Come on,
the reality is we all have. So what I'm trying to say is take a bit of responsibility before we start going, this needs to change, that needs to change, this person, I'm going to grab me a Martin Luther quote and, because I'm perfect over here and all these people need to hear this message. The truth is we all are in a position where we've sown seeds that potentially for our children have overheard on the dinner table, have overheard in the lounge room. It's created a perception and it's grown in them, and it's created the way they visualize the world, the way they visualize that culture, the way they visualize that people. And I'm talking about even being a Māori, even towards our own culture. We can be like, oh, racist, but the reality is we've said some things that are prejudiced against our own cultures as well. So we are sowing these seeds and creating, contributing to this society.
That's a key point that my wife's mentioned there, is that we've all got blood on our hands in some way in terms of this racist thing. And we're like, oh, no, but when sitting around the table, like, oh, here, for instance, those useless Māoris, or gee, those bums need to get a job, or those honkies, or, come on, I'm busting a reel, or this person or that, or those lowlifes, or those scums, or those high and mighty thinking that they own everything, or like the list goes on and on and on, and it's a prejudice approach that we take. And obviously the word prejudice, the meaning of that is to prejudge, and that's really what we have been raised in. And how that happens is that we usually an indelible impact, or something has impacted us based on what we've seen or what we've experienced with a certain class of people, with a certain colour or race of people, or with a certain status of rich, poor, middle class people, that whether it was young, we were young, or whether our parents said, oh, cops are like this, or teachers are like this, or those Māoris or those Aboriginals or those white people or those Chinese are like this, and all of a sudden we've put just through one experience or a couple of experiences, and even it might not even been a personal experience, but something that your parents or your friend had, and now you have put that class or race of people into that box based on an impression that you have got from them or heard about them. And so the honest truth is, to some degree, we do have, and it does impact us in how we view the world and how we start to look at different classes of people and races. And the other thing is this, is that when anything is different to what we are and what we know, already there's a divide there. We're like, oh, I don't understand it, so I'll categorize it as this. And just because we haven't been raised around all the different cultures and been a part of their households and their culture and different ways of life, we can all automatically think that our way is the better way and that their way is weird. And so my wife's right there is that, you know, we might think, no, I'm not racist, and we might not be racist, but we can kind of just have a prejudiced mindset, whether it's a minute one or it's a massive sort of racist one. That, you know, somewhere on the spectrum, it's impactful on the way we see things and on other people around us. And as I said, we can start to just chuck people into a box based on those experiences.
Yeah, and hey, this is mate, we're all in the same boat here, but I think that's where we've got to look at society and what's been created and how it's subtly just crept into our culture, subtly snuck into our lifestyle, in our homes, in our mindsets, but how what we're seeing now is the extreme, isn't it? It's the extreme measure of the way people are treated, and it's disgusting, it's not acceptable, it's horrible. But like I said, I feel that the challenge to each of us as individuals to make a change, truly, it has to be an inside job. There has to be something we need to check in our own mindset, in our own heart, and the way that we perceive, the way that we treat, the way that we speak about others in general, not just to do with race, is actually creating the world that we live in. And I've got, like Samuel said, like prejudice, the meaning of prejudice is a preconceived opinion that is not based on reason or actual experience. So what that means is some people are making prejudice, you know, they're prejudiced towards people and they haven't even experienced it. It's just based on their own opinion and it's not even factual. And, you know, like I'm a New Zealand Māori, and we've seen and we know a lot of what's happened to our own people, and even to this day, the way that they're treated, the way that they're made to feel less than, the way that, you know, like other races are made make themselves feel more superior and more worthy, and you know, should have more privileges. So I think that's another thing too, is like people do say, oh, there's no privileges, like everyone's treated the same. That's not true.
No way.
That is not true.
No way.
The truth of the matter is, you know, the European race does in all countries, especially with Indigenous culture, have a more of an advantage.
Yeah.
They do. And, you know, it's not, you know, we're not judging Europeans, but at the same time, that is, and like I said, even as a European, you've got to take some sort of responsibility to understand that that is truth, and not be like, oh, no, we all work just as hard and we all get the same advantages. The truth is it's not. That's not actually the fact.
Well, the truth of the matter is we're living in a colonized kind of world where the white man has gone into different countries and set up a way. And to be honest, when you look through history and how it was done, it hasn't been done in a good way. In fact, it's involved a lot of destruction upon races, and we've even seen the extinction of races and that through these things. So the past is the past, but you got to realize that that is true, is that there is, majority of the time, the Indigenous race of that country is in a disadvantaged position. That's why you see the living circumstances they're in, and poverty and you know, alcohol and suicide and all those things. Usually the Indigenous race is at the bottom of the heap with that stuff. Now the other side of that coin is that you can't live in that place and you've got to rise above it and find a way out, and that's true too. But we do have to acknowledge the fact as well that there is a bit of difference in that. Huge difference, really.
You know, it kind of makes me feel really sad, actually, even just discussing the topic and thinking about the way that a lot, like I think of our Māori people, I think of the Indigenous of Australia and how they were treated, how colonisation came about, and how they were immediately treated as less than, savages, you know, like barely even human, just another kind of animal. You know what I mean? Like, and that sounds horrible to the ear, but the reality is that oppression has filtered down into the generations.
Yeah.
And that's something that, you know, we feel really strongly about. I know a lot of people do, about breaking that oppression. breaking that oppression. And I think that's the same when I look at the Black American of, in America. Same thing, that oppression. We all know their history. We all know where they came from. We know how they were treated, and that fear and that intimidation and that fear for their lives to be under that oppression. It's still here now. Like we all go, oh yay, Martin Luther King and slavery's no longer, but there's still that dominating, what I will say, like the same spirit that was back then, still dominating through people who feel that sense of superiority. Like, nah, we treat them like that because they are less. And so I do feel sad. I look at our Indigenous people and I see the oppression, and I see often the cycle that they live in, because that's what they've constantly, it's kind of like, you raise a child in a certain way and you constantly tell them you're useless. You'll never amount to anything. Those words create the world that they live in. And that's what I believe in a lot of our Indigenous cultures. That's what is constantly spoken over them. They believe it, so they're under that oppression. And I think that's where, that's just the reality of it. And for us, like identifying it and actually saying, nah, there's an issue here that needs to be dealt with. But we can be continually sowing into that same culture without realizing it. Like we said, just the little comments we make and the seeds that we sow into our children about a certain race, about a certain type of person, about a certain, what do you call it? Certain lifestyle, whatever it is, our kids can be brought into a society and a culture where that's all they know. Those perceptions and those prejudices is just the way of life. And I think now people are actually speaking up about it and talking about it. It's not acceptable anymore, whereas it had been acceptable. People would just slip it under the rug. Oh, it's okay, don't worry about it. But now the Indigenous people are actually standing up, and with these circumstances taking place yet again, but being highlighted on social media, and the whole world being like, oh my gosh, that was horrible, even though it's been happening for forever. I think it's just really put that challenge before us. But yeah, I think that's some...
So we've acknowledged the fact that it is true. A lot of the time the Indigenous are at the short end of the stick. We also need to acknowledge that to fight fire with fire is not the way forward. In fact, we have to... And if we look into man's answers and into history and how we've tried and different things, to try and see peace happen, or to just make war so we can change things. The key scripture that I want to read is actually, I believe, is the answer.
Yeah.
It trumps any quote or any great man or political leader or past voice that we've heard. And it's obviously the voice of Christ. In Mark chapter 12, verse 30, he says, "And you shall love the Lord your God." That's key right there. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. This is the first commandment. Now, we might full stop there and go, oh, cool, I suppose that's a good one. But Christ doesn't stop. He actually goes, and the second, like it. And it's this: you shall love your neighbor as you love yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these. So obviously that ties right back to the start of what this topic is called, is starting with me, with my heart. So the heart, the home, the world. So my heart, first of all, we're believers that you need to love God and have a relationship with Christ, because He's the one that gives you this abundant life, and He gives you answers beyond the natural, and actually gives you the power spiritually to overcome these things. The next phase from that is that actually you're loving God, but then loving yourself. And a lot of the time, this hatred and this racism and this oppression and this violence and these attacks and all this yucky stuff that we see happening in the world is a reflection of the internal world of that individual. So as we see the photos and the policemen and we might see even on the flip coin, as much as it's Black Lives Matter and there's marches, we've seen videos of cars running over policemen and people charging into shops and robbing things. And so really it makes no sense. It's that okay, we're standing for a good cause, but on the other end, we lose credibility when we do the same thing.
Yeah.
So that internal world is still, there's not a settled sort of rulership in yourself to know that you're greater and bigger than that. So that's a beautiful thing, is to love yourself. And then the third phase of that, so love God, love yourself, and then love your neighbour. And, you know, you might have heard the term of, how can I love my neighbour? Or, Lord, help my neighbour if I can't love myself. But if I can love my neighbour as I love myself, I start to view people differently.
Yeah.
I look beyond their colour, their status, what they've done wrong, what their people in the past that, you know, did inflict upon my people, or what their ancestors done. I can look past that, and I know that's very difficult. Look past that and look at them as a new individual, even though they might not deserve it, even though they might be in a state of hate themselves. If I can have a love, that's the greatest. Love is the greatest. It conquers all things.
Yeah.
It knows no hate. It knows no boundaries. It knows no racism. It knows no wars and walls. But
Yeah.
love is something that is a powerful substance that can change
Yeah.
ultimately anything, to be honest.
It's good. It's good because, you know, as we all see and we get outraged and your heart, you know, you're mad at the way that people treat other people, quite often, and we all do it, is we're reactionary, right? Someone did something wrong, you know, there needs to be justice, and that person needs this, which is true. But the reality is us fighting hate with hate, us, you know, fighting darkness with darkness, like, you know, the Martin Luther quote says, is it's not going to do anything. All it's going to do is be that vicious cycle of hate, that vicious cycle of like that constant hate just swirling around, when the reality is there has to be somebody who rises up that's bigger than that, that actually realizes this is a bigger issue. And like you said, is if somebody is treating other people like that, there's something really messed up going on in their inner world.
Big time.
Massively messed up going on in their inner world. That's why it's so easy for them to treat others like that. So it's so much bigger than just the surface that we see. And I think that's where true change has to come from us, first of all, taking that responsibility and making those changes inwardly, and then therefore being able to affect others.
Yeah.
And and wrapping it up, and like Sam's saying, really, the answer is through Christ.
Hard.
Truly. And I know everyone thinks, oh, you know, that's just a soft approach, and love, and no, we need to stand. Like, yes, we stand. Yes, our voice is heard. Yes, we speak for truth, and we stand for justice. But at the same time, the answer to all of this is not going to be fighting war, hate with hate, you know, because everybody is just a vicious cycle. You know, like I see some of the videos and the way people are treating the police, and then the police pull their gun out, and everyone's like, oh, look at him, he's pulling his gun out. Like, man, the dude's just trying to protect his life. And the thing is, I even look at how they're being treated, and I'm like, man, not every police officer is like that man that did what he did.
Yep, that's right.
And I'm like, far out, this is just messed up. Like, it's just getting worse and worse and worse. But gosh, we could go on and on and on.
Could.
But the reality is that truly it only is really by the Spirit of God that these things can be
big time
conquered. These things can actually truly be taken care of. And love, I know it seems like a little fluffy thing, but the reality is like love really does have that power, and love can see past all the hate, can see past all the evil, can see past all that, and not react with hate, and actually understand and know. And like, you know, I love the scripture in Isaiah 61 verse 1, where God speaks about like the Spirit of God when he's upon us. Like, what he does is he gives us the ability to share the good news, to give that hope to people that are in dark places, to actually, you know, release those who are bound, that are brokenhearted, that are the hurt ones that are hurting people, that are the ones that are mistreating people, that are the ones with hate in their heart, unforgiveness in their heart, racism in their heart, to actually set them free. And one thing here I've got here too is like to proclaim freedom for those who are captive. And, you know, we talked about that oppression over, you know, the black people of America and the way they're treated, the oppression over a lot of Indigenous in many countries. And that's the thing, is the true freedom can only really come through the Spirit of God and through men and women who bring that gospel, who bring that truth. and who bring God's Spirit into that. So that's a lot of stuff.
It is.
I think that's a lot to chew on.
Quite a deep little
but
topic, actually.
Yeah, I think, in wrapping it all up, I think the big thing is really, instead of us just looking out in the world, going on social media, reacting to everything that we see and hear, and being mad and being angry, it's actually stopping and going, hold on a second.
Yeah.
How am I contributing to this world? Am I sowing that love? Am I changing the way I speak it? Is my heart and my mind and my perception and things that I'm doing, contributing to that culture? Or am I making a change? And that's where really we have the power to change our worlds first, then we can impact further and further and further. So that's where it starts for us, and I believe for all of us to take a bit of a reflect on.
Big time. Reflect on reflect on ourselves. Reflection in the mirror to see where we're at. And and while this is all happening, the government will be doing some shady little things behind the scenes, just to chuck that in there. But you know what? Look, maybe we do need to challenge our own mindsets, because if you're a believer in Christ and you're listening to this, or you're not, that's cool. But maybe this is an opportunity for us to actually to be the light and to do what we can to help change the situation, but reflect on ourselves and what we can do to go to new places and to lead our people. And our brothers and sisters. How dare they? Because we know that does not bring about a solution. So that's all from us today.
So a practical step that we can take from this is, how do we help change the world? Help heal more hearts. Help heal more people who are hurt, who are broken, who have had horrible lives, who've been mistreated, because if we can help heal them, then that cycle is not going to repeat itself. They're not going to continue to hurt others. They're not going to continue to treat others in a bad way. So heal our heart. Let's help heal other hearts. Let's help heal other people through Christ, through his love, and through his power.
Cool.
Amen.
That's us signing out. Sam and Kiri doing life every Thursday. We'll see you next time.
Bless you guys.